Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my power ranking series. For my number 9 team, we're going to be looking at the Los Angeles Chargers. All right, so there's a lot of good stuff here that the Chargers have done over their very short time with Brandon Staley in charge. We're going to start with the offensive line. It has gotten significantly better in just a very short period of time. I mean, I love the Rashawn Slater pick when they made it. He had some of the best pass protection that we've seen from a rookie. I mean, I know kind of Tristan Wirfs ruined the idea of what a rookie tackle looked like, so we're super hard on rookie tackles. But Rashawn Slater, it was right up there for an immediate impact to the O line. And that really helps Justin Herbert having someone that reliable on his blind side. Allows him to stick in the pocket more and really stretch the field with all these weapons he has. Matt Fowler, left guard, really interesting player. He's played pretty well at guard. He's a I'd say an average to average guard. But the real interesting thing about him is that he could kick out to tackle as well, and he's had serviceable play there. So when they had Bulaga actually starting at right tackle, where he really, I mean, he plays on average something like 6 games a year his last couple years. It's just really injuries were really not on his side, but regardless. The thing about when you get someone like Fowler who can play both of those, that he can kind of do some fill-in roles. So if Storm Norton, who's currently at right tackle, this is at the very evident weak side on this team. If Storm Norton really does not work out, you can kick Matt Fowler to play right tackle and try to find someone else to play left guard, which is a higher likelihood in working. It is easier to find people to play guard than it is to find people to play tackle, at least in the NFL's recent experience. Now, that might be changing with how good some of these interior pass rushers are starting to get. We see Aaron Donald really start to bully these type of guys, so it's really hard to really scheme around it and protect a quarterback, right? Because these guys can penetrate the pocket, push it in. It makes it super hard for these quarterbacks to step up and make a throw. It's a little easier to get around an edge if they're coming on the outside. You can step up, give your tackle a couple extra, minute seconds. But we'll see how that adjusts. For now, it's still easier to fill a guard position than it is a tackle. So if Storm Norton struggles, you can kick Matt Fowler out to that side, and I'd actually really like Jamari Salyer here to take that spot if that comes into play. I actually thought his tape was a little underrated. I think they got him in the 6th round, if I remember correctly, something like that. And I was very much praising the Chargers for that. I think they got a quality depth piece O lineman very late in the draft, which is typically not how that works. There's not too many guys that I think can be depth players or fill-in starters in the pinch when you get that late down there. We also have to talk about Corey. I can see I made a mistake. It still says R. Lindsay. My bad. It's actually Corey Linsley. It's supposed to be a C there. My bad. Corey Linsley is actually a very interesting center. He's been one of the top centers of the last few years, although he hasn't always gotten his respect, which is kind of weird. Centers are always kind of in this weird category of they do a lot of work. They have to do a lot of IDing or line protection as well if the quarterback doesn't do it themselves. But they don't always get the love for it, despite having to do all that and have to read, blitzes and stuff like that. But Corey is one of the best at it, especially when it comes to pass protection. Which, again, when you have a system like this with Justin Herbert, who can really stretch the field and you can utilize these receiving weapons so well, having someone who's that good in pass protection to allow Herbert to have the time to make those throws, it's incredible, and it was a great buy. I know they had to pay top dollar; they basically had to reset the market when they got him, but it was absolutely worth the money. Now Zion Johnson was one of the guys I was super high on. Kind of surprisingly so, in my opinion. I think he ranks either. I think he either snuck just into top fives or was just on the outside of top five, if I remember correctly, of players I evaled in that draft class. Which I thought he was going to rank closer, on the outskirts of 10. But when I actually went back through it, I'm like, no, actually, I'd take him over a lot of these guys. Zion is a very special athlete. He's a little shorter than typical. I think he ranks somewhere around 6'2" to 6'3". I think he's just under 6'3", if I remember correctly, from my measurements. And I mean, he is almost as clean as it gets for a guard prospect. He plays with leverage, and I think that really helps with his shorter stature. But because he's shorter and has the leverage, you'd naturally think that he would be able to lose the battle against some of these longer guys, right, who can kind of just long arm him. Well, Zion's actually got unnaturally long arms as well. He actually has, potential tackle arm length. When we talk about that 33-inch cutoff, it's it makes him a really interesting and tough matchup for a lot of these interior pieces. And Zion's already shown that he is pretty mentally sharp when it comes to IDing blitzes, coming off double teams, getting moving in motion. Like he's not bad at all mentally either. So I don't think it's going to take him too long to catch up to the NFL standard. I wouldn't be overly surprised if he is more of an immediate impact than maybe people talk about. I think that was a very good decision by the Chargers to get him, especially with the tackles gone that I think they would have rather had, so they could fill in that right tackle spot. With those top three gone, it was an easy choice for them. Now we have to talk about the quarterback himself, Justin Herbert. Absolutely deserves a star. One of the top quarterbacks in the league right now. He's he was one of the most weird prospects coming out. I think I've ever evaluated because you could see the games where he would just bomb out and there's just no stopping him. And then you'd see games where it's like he was super late to a read, and he'd be tossing the ball into double coverage and threatening turnovers all the time. So it was really hard to evaluate Justin Herbert. Uh, but you can kind of see. I don't know if any of you watched Hard Knocks, but if you watched Hard Knocks, you can kind of see why. When they were working with Herbert, there's a lot of things Oregon, I guess, just didn't get around to teaching him, or maybe he was struggling with in college. I don't know which way or who was the initiator of that. But there's stuff like progression and reads he really seemed to not understand or really was very comfortable utilizing. And when they started breaking that down for him with the Chargers, it you started to see the Justin Herbert that we see now. He's got all the athletic tools that now his processor is starting to catch up to. We're starting to see sky the limit type of play out of Justin Herbert. He's very likely going to be a top five quarterback when some of these older players like Rodgers or Brady start to see their retirement. He very well could likely pass up Russell Wilson if Wilson continues to slip a little bit. We'll see how he adjusts with the Broncos, but for now, Wilson's still a top five. But I honestly think a lot of the future of the NFL is going to be like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Kyler Murray can very likely be in that conversation as well. Dak's starting to get up there with a couple other retirements as well. Lamar, of course, always threatens that with his explosive ground play. We're starting to see some very, very good quarterback play starting to rise up through the ranks here. And we're going to have to get used to these guys being dominant for, at the very least, next 10 years, which is very exciting to see. Backfield and receiver. So this is who we're going to be throwing the ball to. Uh, Interesting pieces here. Let's go through this. Keenan Allen still one of the better route runners in the league. Did seem to slow down a little last year, at least athletically, but with the way they use Keenan Allen, I don't think it really matters overly much. His routes more than make up from the athletic tail off that's going to be occurring to him. And I think the Raiders, when they're looking at Davante Adams, they're like, hey, if that starts to happen to Davante Adams in like 2-3 years from now, into that contract we gave him, and we basically get Keenan Allen type route running with hopefully at least a form of Davante's current form of release, it's like that was a no-brainer for the Raiders, and it was a no-brainer for the Chargers when they decided to extend Keenan Allen. They're like, this route running is, I mean, it's elite. The way that Keenan Allen can sink and get into these blind spots of these corners and really get them to bite on things, he can always threaten almost every route. He has a complete route tree, which is really well when you have a very I wouldn't say pass heavy scheme, but it's a pass oriented scheme. And the idea that the linemen, and the quarterback you have in play function better when you kind of just let it rip. And to complement Keenan Allen's more route running style of gameplay, you have Mike Williams, who's more that very lengthy, big body, make the tough catch type of receiver or possession receiver, we say. Very good in one-on-ones downfield as well. He had some inconsistencies with that early on, but he seems to, at least early on last year, he seemed to have gotten a little bit better at that. And when you have a guy like Justin Herbert as well, I mean, throwing, you can those jump balls or even back shoulders that we saw a couple times to these big body receivers in one-on-one, 25, 30 yards downfield. I mean, that's incredibly difficult for a cornerback to stop. I think technically a back shoulder is impossible to stop if thrown in the exact right area. And again, you have Justin Herbert with the arm strength and talent he's already shown. So I mean, with the chemistry they have as well, that was a very, very good signing for them as well. The way they structured that contract too, is very heavy in certain areas, but very light in others. It makes it super easy for both sides to separate if it ever needs to come to be. Josh Palmer was a guy they drafted in the third round. I was one of the guys who was bigger on Josh Palmer. I thought he was kind of a really master of none, but just very good at all type receiver. He fits the blocking mentality here for receivers very well. Both Keenan and Mike block very well. I think that's also in Hard Knocks as well, if I remember correctly. They talk about the importance of blocking, and it is very important, especially even when I say this is a very pass-oriented scheme. When you start getting guys on these like little hitch routes in schemes, or these little, I think they're called bubble screens as well. Yeah, bubble screens on the outside, or a little fake hitch to in route on bubble screens. There's a lot of stuff like that you can do screen wise, and it's very important for these wide receivers to be able to block in that scheme because it's important that they set the lead before the linemen come up behind often, or if the linemen come at all, they might not. So it's important that these guys are able to block, and Josh Palmer fits that mold very well. He also fits the mold very well in the essence of he's very good in contested catch. He's not really an issue in that. I mean, I saw that as well when I was watching his tape. I said, I don't think I'll have an issue with him dropping too many balls, and that's shown up pretty well. So a pretty decent selection there, and I think he'll have a bigger role going into this year, with Guyton still starting to take more of that deep threat role, and he'll kind of rotate some more in. Tight end, Gerald Everett was picked up here from Seattle. He really struggled, and it was definitely not due to scheme or usage. I mean, he had his chances a lot. Like he got open multiple times. There's one really bad interception that was, it shows up on Russell Wilson's sheet, but it's really not his fault. Just Everett dropping a really dumb pass that would have been a touchdown, and he ends up kicking it up into a DB's hands for a pick on like it was like 4 yards out from the goal line. There is mental errors with Gerald Everett that really need to be rectified, and you hope they are here because he is a superb athlete at tight end. He fits the modern tight end build of these very vertical and I don't want to say poor blockers because they're not always poor blockers. Some of these guys actually block well in certain schemings, but I would say non-traditional, block and line tight ends. But if Gerald Everett can just slow down his mental processing and focus on the catch before the what's coming after, as I believe that's probably what his problem is. It's a problem with a lot of these younger receivers where they're thinking too much about what they're doing after the catch, so they lose focus on the actual catch itself. That's why you see guys like AJ Brown or even occasionally like DK will drop a pass that should be a catch for them, and it's stuff like that does it. The more interesting guy here for me actually is Donald Parham Jr., who has extreme length. He's a very good athlete. Had a scary injury last year, but he seems to have recovered pretty well. I really liked the chemistry I've seen between him and Justin Herbert, and I think with that length as well, with Herbert's arm talent, you can do something really special there. So I'd be keeping an eye on Donald Parham going into this year. Running back room, some change up as well. Austin Ekeler's still here. I mean, he's an excellent fantasy option, purely because they use him so many different ways. He's part of the screen game here that you need those receivers to be able to block for. He's great on basically all forms of receiving plays. He's one of the best third down backs. Now you get to pair it with some pretty good runners. I like Josh Kelly a lot. I think he's pretty good, that kind of third running back in rotation. And they just drafted Isaiah Spiller as well to be kind of more of the bruiser in this group. I'll be curious to see how he fits with them schematically, as they were kind of lacking a more traditional bruiser last year. And I think Spiller could fill that role if he kind of gets up to NFL speed early on, which running backs often do. It's more typical in their nature to get up to it really quickly. So I'll be keeping an eye on what Isaiah Spiller's role is here. He also is an underrated receiver as well. Defensive front seven, some really nice pieces here. We'll start with the kind of role players here. Drue Tranquill, Kenneth Murray. These are your starting linebackers. Could do a lot worse, honestly. I think Kenneth Murray is been pretty solid. Maybe not first round grade as you were hoping when they came up to get him. But I think we've seen a lot worse in recent era of first round picks not doing well, and Murray's at least played solidly. Drew Tranquil pairing with him, I think, has also been a pretty good combo. I like those two in the middle, and I'm excited to see how they continue to develop moving forward. You're really hoping for something big out of them. On the defensive line, it's a little more iffy. This is kind of where their weak is on the interior. They did pick up Sebastian Joseph Day, which I thought was a very good selection by them in free agency, going to spend money there. Get someone kind of big in the middle who can really help out in the run defense, take up lanes, and really just push the pocket. He doesn't really offer too much pass-wise besides that push pocket, but I think you're more worried about being gashed by the run game when looking at this team. They still have Jerry Tillery here, former first round pick. I do not expect much out of him, but I did want to note that he's still here. I imagine Brandon Staley's going to try to get him in that Aaron Donald role again and see if he can make something happen pass rush wise, but I wouldn't hold out hope. But note that he is still here. The Van Noy selection at the edge, he's more of a hybrid, but at that, I think that's a very interesting pickup as well. It allows Staley to do more of these hybrid fronts than he was doing with the Rams 2 years back when he was just there before he came to the Chargers. So I would be looking to see what he does with Kyle Van Noy. There's some fun stuff I think he might be able to do with him. I wouldn't be surprised even if he lines up Van Noy at like a traditional Sam linebacker position and just kind of threatens blitz or makes quarterbacks try to figure out where's Van Noy going to sit. He's a super versatile player, and that's what Bill Belichick and Brian Flores, when they went and got him, that's what they loved about him. Now let's talk about the two superstars here in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. This is the 1-2 punch that, I mean, clearly the Chargers were extremely excited to get. Brandon Staley talks about Khalil Mack all the time, and now he gets to pair him with another superstar edge in Joey Bosa. You've got someone who's, I mean, Joey's a pretty big guy naturally, but Khalil plays with such a power that is so unique. I mean, Khalil can convert his speed to power, I think, better than anyone else in the league. I think I can pretty safely say that even at this stage, he is a special edge player that I would have never left my team. Honestly, he is one of those transcendent level talents that when you spend a first round pick on, you hope they turn it to Khalil Mack. And for him to have to be on two different teams before this at this point, to me, is crazy. It's just unfortunate because he does not deserve that at all. But circumstances worked that way. The Raiders had their money choices. They chose to spend it elsewhere, and the Bears just unfortunately had to go through a rebuild. So getting Khalil Mack to add to the pass rush here with Joey Bosa should be a long day for most tackles. And I think most tackle groups will not be able to keep up with it. Which should hopefully, I think what Brandon is hoping for is free up some guys in the middle. Maybe Jared Taylor, you can finally, really embrace the more pass rushing interior role that he's kind of designed for, with Mack and Bosa really starting to take more of the pressure. Since you really can't slide protection to one side with both of them, it really opens up the other if you do, unless you're running towards the other side. And even then, I wouldn't put it past Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack to track down a running back from the backside. So what you really be hoping for is one of these guys gets doubled and everyone else is one-on-one. You just have to hope the guy is one-on-one with one of these superstar edge players, doesn't get utterly brutalized, and then you have to win on the interior. So there was a lot of very clear thought and good process here that went for when the Chargers decided to make that trade for Khalil Mack. And then, of course, Joey, a very good technician in the game, pretty complete tool belt. Both Bosa brothers, when coming into the draft, were super high floor productive players early on, and kind of I think everyone knew that, or at least in when I was talking around to people, we all kind of agreed that those players are easy top five selections with real no bust potential, and both of them showed that. Defensive backs, let's get to it. All right, so definitely a lot of moves here that are intriguing, but not really any move for free safety. And Nasir Adderley is still getting some chances here. He he hasn't shown overly much. He does, I mean, he's got the athletics you like, he's got the length you like. He can, do the hybrid role, come up and down like that. He's not out of his tool belt. But man, you do hope for a little bit more. You always want more when you have a player like that. So we'll see if this is the year. This is kind of make or break for him. They did go pick up Woods from Baylor, who is an extreme athlete. I love a lot of the athletics that I saw from Woods. And most of that Baylor team in general had extreme athletes, but Woods is pretty raw if I'm entirely honest. I don't think he'll be ready to play early on, but if Nazir Adderley does fail and they don't pick up, another free safety, maybe they'll pick up a veteran option to help Woods again. But I would not be surprised if Woods ends up being the long-term option here if everything does click mentally. So keep an eye on that. Derwin James, he's switching to number 3. He's no longer 33. He's still one of the best safeties in the league. Injuries have hopefully kind of seemed to be behind him going into this last year. I mean, you really can't ask for much more than Derwin, honestly. Especially with how he is with the crew. He seems really good with the actual defensive players. They seem to love him a lot. He seems to be very, very well respected in the organization. He does not cause problems off field, which again is a huge bonus when you're talking about these ultra high-end famous athletes, right? That a lot of trouble is often attracted to fame. So he's about as perfect as a strong safety for this defense and for a system that Brandon Staley wants to run, where you can see how they use the Ram safeties. I mean, now you just imagine what you have Derwin James doing that. That's where all that productivity is going to be coming from. And on top of that, you have a extremely nice corner group. Getting J.C. Jackson for that price tag for this style of defense, this very quarters heavy defense, is perfect. I mean, we saw like what guys like Darius Williams could do in a defense like this I think Darius technically matches at 5'9" on my board. I think some people have him a little over 5'9", some people have him a little under, but I think 5'9" is what I had him at. But if Darius Williams at 5'9" with, the athletics and good reach that he's had play that well in this, having a guy like JC Jackson at 5'10" or 5'11" is not going to matter much. The height should not be an issue. JC has incredible feel of the ball. He feels out receivers coming down the line very well. He knows how to catch guys on overs. I mean, we saw this with New England, and the play didn't drop. There was not really a down year for JC. He was always kind of just, yeah, he's good. He's one of the better corners. And the Patriots had to let him go, unfortunately. I was really shocked they did. I thought that Bill was going to finally fork out the money for one, but nope, that's not the one he did. So very good pickup for the Chargers. And pairing him with another guy who is very similar in that mentality, in Asante Samuel Jr., who I was very high on, I think is very good. I'd have no fear as a defense starting 2-5-10 or again 5'11". They're somewhere in that mix. Corners, where most people in the league kind of have that 6'1" cutoff. At least they did, about 8 years ago. A lot of the mentality of the league is starting to shift now. But I'd have no fear starting either of these two corners on my outside going into this year. And in case of that does become an injury, right? Or not an injury, but it does become an issue. You have Michael Davis at 6'3", who plays the scheme pretty well as well. They made sure to extend him when Brandon Staley came here, and I think that was not an issue at all. I actually think that was pretty smart. It gives them another answer to some of the bigger body guys if that does become an issue. And then you can slide one of these guys into the slot. And if you don't want to, you still have Bryce Callahan, one of the top slots in the league, leaving the Broncos to come here, and he'll play again very well in the system. The system's very designed for a guy like him. Brandon Staley and that Los Angeles Chargers front office did very well to not only get high-end talent, but get guys that are here for now and for the future that fit their scheme overly well. I mean, I would not be surprised if you see a lot of dime looks come out of this crew. You really let, Nazir Adderley or Derwin James get to sit high. You could be hybrid in that front, and you could bring out all four of these corners to match up on their best match and just say, beat them. That's kind of the stuff I was talking about with the Saints, where it's like they have kind of just an answer for everything. And really good luck to you being the secondary. The only weakness I can really see is Nazir Adderley. And if Adderley puts it together, I mean, that's where this defense gets scary. Special teams and coaching. Brandon Staley, one of the better defensive lines of the league currently. Very bold in the way that he 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 makes calls. I mean, going for it. He's been notorious. He's almost in the Harbaugh mentality of just going for it. But you can't blame him. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. He's willing to risk it though. So I think he's definitely not a problem at coaching. Coordinators, I actually like Ficken and Lombardi a lot. I think they're definitely not issues when it comes to, if their coaching is going to hurt this team. I don't think coaching will hurt this team at all. The only thing that can hurt them is when they do take that risk, which they're taking that risk knowingly of, going forward on 4th and 4 or whatever it is. But I think actually coordinator-wise, I don't think they hurt this team at all. I think Lombardi and Fick can help elevate some of the team they have here. For actual special teamers, J.K. Scott, I'm willing to try it. I don't think that's a bad attempt for special teamers. Dustin Hopkins, he's been just a fine kicker. No issues there at all. So you've got one kind of question mark in Scott, seeing what he can maybe do coming off of a rocky time in the league. But I think he's still pretty young. I don't think that's entirely a bad idea to give him a shot. So for power ranking wise, the LA Chargers are, I mean, this team is primed for now and for the future. They've done incredibly well to build. There's a couple holes that we talked about briefly that you do worry about. I mean, the right tackle spot. I said there's a way they can, do some patchwork to get by it, but it's not a solution and it's definitely not a long-term one either. So that's going to struggle. And the interior of the defensive line, Brandon Staley is going to have to get quite creative with to actually get by it and account for people trying to attack that as a weakness. There's also the question of, I think, that we didn't talk about overly much, but what the running game actually looks like. If Austin Ekeler's hurt, you're really relying on guys like Spiller and Kelly to carry the load, which it may be fine, it may not. The question for me is I need to see how Spiller handles the receiving game going to the NFL. He did really well in college. He was very underrated as a receiving back, even though he's not an extreme athlete coming out of the backfield. But I need to see what that looks like versus these, the extreme athletes of the NFL. We're talking about the 1% here. So there's stuff like that that clearly this team is still hurting on, but man, are they ready. They seem just raring to go, and I'm excited to see them this season. For that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Later.